You know what we think about Shin and what he has done for the good of Universe 7, but what could he actually do? Hey guys, MasakoX here, and welcome to another episode of our Dragon Ball Build-A-Something series. If you have been with the channel for a while now, which I hope you have been, you might be aware that we conduct a lot of thought experiments, which include supposing whether something might have happened or what might have been good wasn't necessary, and in this example, how to create the absolute best, or at least the most optimal example, of something based on what we know from the actual show and the general lore of Dragon Ball. We've not just covered baddies like we did in our mini-series of Building Baddies, to which you can check out earlier on, we've covered a fair few topics within the show's illustrious history. Admittedly, it has been a while since our last episode where we designed 2 new Super Saiyan forms which didn't just go for the lowest common denominator or just look flashy for the sake of it. We covered something that would work really for the best for the characters that we bestowed these powers to. We had the likes of Divine Mind for Vegeta and Sparking Joy for Goku. Check that video out if these forms intrigue you and you want to know more. They certainly intrigued us. And after that, we also designed a baddie along with the full set of misfit minions and some backgrounds for them to fight in. So what else remains for us to do, Masako? Well, we've got the basics of a typical Dragon Ball arc. An enemy, we've got a setting, we've got a goal, and things for the Saiyans to aspire to or obtain. Now, granted, we could technically make some new supporting characters for our heroes, but what would be fun to design regarding that? Not to mention the cold, hard fact that we need to give the supporting characters that we've already got their dues, as the show clearly isn't going to anytime soon, especially if your name is either Tenshinhan or Krillin. Well, remember the old theory that came about when we reached the long-awaited end of the Tournament of Power arc? You know, the one that involved Android 17 when he wished to restore not only the 7 universes that were erased during the actual Tournament of Power, but also maybe the other 6 that Zeno supposedly got rid of somewhere in the very ancient history of the DB multiverse? Like that whole thing about Nappa and the wish to bring back all those felled by Frieza and his men. Did anything come of this grand gesture in the background that we don't know of? If so, what would it look like and how would it act and what would we see? How about we design an angel, a Kai, and a God from one of those universes that was erased? But what's the point of this, Masako? Well, in order to have a good lead in a particular universe and to differentiate potential newbies from ones that we've got already, it's always best to understand what we could have and what would be the best options for a compelling character or set of characters, as well as one who would be actually useful. Looking at you, Shin. So let's start with the type of being that we've known about for the longest time in the clouds, since the days of the Buu saga. A Supreme Kai. Man, gone are the days when we thought that King Kai, or even the Grand Kai for the anime, was the end of the road for our leaders upstairs. Actually, if it had just been the Grand Kai who was the actual head honcho, I think things would be pretty chill, man. If they ever make a live-action movie, Jeff Bridges has to voice the Grand Kai. Right off the bat, there is something that is yet both easy to see and something that hasn't really been touched upon. The interesting thing to note here is the fact that although the 12 Supreme Kai that we see in the anime and manga are all exclusively male in appearance, Kais don't really have an exact gender since they are literally fruits of a super tree, Toyotaro did in fact design 3 more Supreme Kai models, with one being female identifying. Cool. Now don't think of this as being something that is just the signs of the times or anything. This has been the case since the lore was established in the mid-90s, particularly in Universe 7, where we had a West Supreme Kai who was a lady. Ah, the days when there were 4 Supreme Kais per universe to divvy up the work. But nowadays it seems that that isn't the case everywhere. Job cuts upstairs, so it seems. We also have East Kai. Now, okay, she may not be a Supreme Kai, but in terms of identification and whatnot, there is no real barrier for entry or anything here. So to add some variety to the mix and provide some kind of talking points for later, we are gonna make this Supreme Kai that we're making of this draft universe a female identifying Kai. Now we have to come up with a name for them, but the nomenclature and the name puns for these beings aren't as clear-cut as some other examples that we see in Dragon Ball. Normally it's pretty obvious, but for the likes of Shin, it's a little more nuanced and requires the light perusal of a textbook or two to fully appreciate the joke. While the names of the GODs and angels are based on alcoholic beverages, the Supreme Kai are beings that are named after actual mythological deities and creatures. So this time, it's less of a name pun and more of an homage or a namesake based on real life stuff. For example, Thua, the Supreme Kai of Universe 6, is a being based on Huawa or Humbaba, a Mesopotamian giant, and Agu being derived from Agni from Hinduist mythology. But it's funny just to see that name with a Kai who looks more like a cast-off from Doug than a being whose name is derived from fire. Oh well, not all mods make sense. Now of course, Shin, Kai and Goasu are the oddballs in this list, since they don't seem to follow the trend, Goasu meaning to be or to exist. But the other 9 do follow the criteria, so we will keep that particular structure for our new girl. So after a brief consideration and thinking of something that would fit quite aptly for our guidelines, we have chosen the name Tiha, after the Greek goddess of chance, fate and fortune, Tyche. It's a pretty cool mythological figure to be named after. After all, it was by chance that their universe was brought back thanks to a lazily phrased wish from Android 17. Another cool fact is that the historian Polybius cited that if you couldn't explain a natural phenomena or any kind of weird happening, you could usually just point your finger at Tyche. She had something to do with it, probably. Something with the unexplained. She would be seen and unheard. You would never know that she was there. And as a Supreme Kai, you're not supposed to be, so actually you're doing your job right. In terms of her hair and outfit, we don't really have that much of a choice, as all Supreme Kais do have very specific garb, which we would colour orange with blue accessories in this case. And although her hair is pretty much destined to be a shade of white, we really like the braid that one of the male Supreme Kais designed by Toyotaro originally in these sketches had. These are some of the prototype designs that he made prior to the Tournament of Power, so in order to ensure that that doesn't go to waste, because it's really good, we're going to use that for Tiha. There you go, Toyotaro. Something that you worked hard on will not be forgotten. Now, in terms of the overall look, the Supreme Kais come in all shapes and sizes, but let's give her more classical statuesque look. Maybe a little bit more tanned than Shin's purplish visage. And in terms of body type, we think it'll be interesting if, much like Adult Ranch here, Tiha would be on the taller side of the spectrum, as short female Kais are a bit of a tired trope, and way more predictable. I mean, look at the angels from the recent design pool to really illustrate my point. Let's go hench and tall. There's nothing wrong with a Supreme Kai showing a little bit of heft. When we describe her personality, we shall keep this brief for the purposes of this certain video. We would go for someone much more confident than Shin, obviously, it's not hard to do. A little bit sassy, but never as obnoxious as Ro, but not nearly as eloquent and polished as Vados, of course. I mean, nobody can top sassy Vados. She could also, to differentiate herself from most, have a short temper, which could be seen as endearing, or at least unusual, based on other, less generous Kais commenting on her size and claiming that they can't hear her from up there. Just because you're a being whose job is to maintain balance doesn't mean that you have to act that way with your colleagues. Okay, so who should be the angel to keep the balance between Tiha and her GOD counterpart? Well, as always, we have Toyotaro's sketches that feature 2 angels that haven't been used as of yet, nor will they likely be used since they got leaked. But we are going to use them. Not wholesale, mind you, but merely as an inspiration, rather than a direct copy-paste one of them. It would not be fun to just take it straight from the source. Now, where would we go from here that is something in keeping with the show at large? So, obviously, Toyotaro and Toriyama loved their little contrasts. Just look at Universe 10's triad. They're not exactly the 3 most similar beings based on their look and feel, now are they? While both Goasu and Rumshi are on the taller and more elderly looking side of things, Kusu seems to be pretty short and childlike, despite her being the eldest of the Grand Priest's children. Yeah, that's right. She's the firstborn of the GP. Good old subversion. How strange it can act sometimes. So based on all of these chestnuts, Haverock and I decided to go with a shorter male angel, because there aren't any, as far as we know, of course. As for the name, this is much easier than with Tiha. The name, of course, should be based on an alcoholic pun. So how about Barolo, after the bitter aperitif Aperol, which hails from Italy, and it's actually one of my favourite drinks. I do like me an Aperol spritz. Barolo would of course have his standard issue angel halo and robes, which in his case could be a red-orange hue, like the drink that he's based on, as we haven't seen an angel with red robes yet, and we want to make these guys appear different naturally. As for his facial features, we would make them a little bit sharper than most of the ones that we've seen thus far, again like the drink, almost making him appear to be like the Vegeta of angels with some spikier hair. And to be fair, he would kinda look like an angelic version of Kaba in reality, which could be a good opportunity for a lot of jokes, especially if their personalities would be totally opposite from each other, with Barolo being more serious and kinda grim, keen to take on risks and something perilous, kinda like his name, Parolus. Okay, so now to the most fun and challenging part of this, the destroyers. GODs tend to have some Egyptian, Hindu, Chinese, Greek, or even some shamanistic sources, so how do we make one that would make ours seem original and cool in this bunch? Well, Havelock's idea would be to go with something from the Slavic pantheon, most notably with the idea of many-faced deities such as Triglav or Svetvid. Svetvid is a Slavic deity of war, fertility and abundance, primarily venerated on the island of Rügen into the 12th century. He is often considered a local Rugian variant of the pan-Slavic god Perun. Sometimes referred to Beli or Biali, Svetvid is associated with war and divination, and depicted as a four-headed god, with two heads looking forward and two back. A statue portraying the gods shows him with four heads, each one looking in a separate direction, a symbolical representation of the four directions of the compass, and also perhaps the four seasons of the year. Each face had a specific colour, corresponding to four regions of Slavic tribes. Triglav, on the other hand, is allegedly a representation of three major Slavic deities that vary from tribe to tribe, that serve as representatives of both divine and, of course, earthly realms. The idea for our GOD would be that we would make them appear more like a golem with four faces, changing depending on their mood. So, think something like Hexadecimal from Reboot, in how she could switch emotions with different faces. Only this time we use rocks instead of masks. We know that it's been done before in other media, but we feel that this is kind of exotic for Dragonball, which would really fit into an already colourful set of Dragon World deities and characters. Also note how he said them, as we would make this being more androgynous, speaking with both a male and female voice, as there are multiple faces and multiple moods, something more divine and transcending the concept of gender or the simple humanoid concept of self. Yeah, we're gonna get really artsy. And as for the name, I think one based on mead would be very fitting in this instance. How about Medea? That would have a greyish, rocky skin with brown GOD robes, to make the design more interesting and earthy. We could put maybe some gemstones on their body, similar as what we did with Zidana's race, hinting at some sort of connection maybe. In terms of the personality, four faces would represent calm, joy, sadness and anger, which would correspond to how Medea would perceive the world around them. Joyful Medea would be a prankster, being at odds with Tiha, while the angry face would not be above screaming and showing their power to others. And that's it, our own trio of a Supreme Kai, Angel and GOD. So what did you guys think? Did you like our thought process? Do you have your own ideas? Let's get this discussion going, and I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!